I thought silence was the kinder choice. I was wrong. The words sit in my throat like a swallowed stone. I've rehearsed them in the shower, in the car, in the dim glow of 3 a.m. when the past feels heaviest. But saying them out loud? That's different. That makes them real. I'm sitting at the kitchen table, my kitchen table now, not ours, rolling an old wedding band between my fingers. A habit, not a ritual. I don't wear it anymore, but I can't bring myself to throw it away. Funny how objects outlast feelings. The house is too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses against your eardrums like a held breath. The fridge hums, a faucet drips. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's dog barks, sharp and sudden. Normal sounds, but they feel louder now, like the world is reminding me of all the things I used to tune out. The truth is, I didn't think silence could be a weapon. I thought it was dignified, noble even. If I didn't fight, if I didn't beg, if I just let her go, then maybe the wound would heal cleaner. No messy words, no lingering resentments. Just two adults walking away with their dignity intact. But dignity doesn't keep you warm at night. And silence? Silence is just another kind of abandonment. I remember the last time I saw her, not at the courthouse. That was just paperwork, signatures, a judge's bored nod. No, the real last time was in our old driveway, her loading the last of her things into a rented SUV. The morning air was crisp, the kind of autumn chill that used to make her pull my jacket around her shoulders. She hesitated before getting in the car. Turned back, just for a second. I thought she might say something. I should have spoken first, but I didn't. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her wait for words that never came. And then she left. For months, I told myself I'd done the right thing, that any words I could have offered would have been selfish, a way to ease my own guilt rather than give her what she needed. But now, in the hollow quiet of this house, I wonder if that was just another excuse. Cowardice wears a lot of disguises. Mine wore the face of respect. I'm giving her space. She doesn't need me making it harder. Clean breaks are better. But the thing about clean breaks is that they only work if both people are holding the same scissors. She tried it first, a text here and there, simple things. Left your tax documents on the counter. The insurance called about the policy. Neutral, practical, but beneath them, an unspoken question. Are we still people to each other? I answered only what was necessary, short, polite, distant. Then came the voicemail. Just one. Her voice frayed at the edges. I know you don't want to talk, but just say something. Anything. I deleted it. Not out of anger, out of fear, of what would happen if I let myself hear her hurt, of what it would mean if I finally admitted how much this was costing me too. Now, months later, the divorce is final. The papers are filed. The legal part was easy. The rest? The rest is this. A house that still smells faintly of her shampoo when the heat kicks on. A coffee mug she left behind, chipped at the rim, that I can't bring myself to use or box away. The way I still wake up sometimes, reaching for someone who isn't there, and the crushing weight of knowing that my silence didn't spare her pain. It just made it lonelier. I pick up the wedding band again, press it into my palm until the edges leave marks. I thought silence was the kinder choice. But kindness doesn't leave people wondering if they ever mattered at all. The papers came on a Tuesday. Not that the day mattered, but I remember it was Tuesday because that was when the trash went out, and I almost threw the envelope away by accident. I set it on the kitchen counter next to a half-empty coffee cup. The steam curled up, disappeared. The envelope just sat there. White, neat, completely ordinary except for what was inside. I didn't open it right away. I made another cup of coffee first, black, the way I'd always taken it, though she used to tease me for drinking it like tar. Then I sat down at the table and slid my finger under the flap. No drama, no shouting, just words on paper. Petition for dissolution of marriage. It wasn't a surprise. Not really. The cracks had been there for years, small fractures we'd learned to step around. The way conversations turned into logistics. Did you pay the electric bill? What time is the plumber coming? instead of stories. The way we stopped touching as much, not out of anger, just absence. The way we became experts at living next to each other instead of with each other. She was the one who finally said it out loud. I think we're just making each other lonely. I didn't argue. That's the part that haunts me. Not that I fought, but that I didn't. That when she said those words, my first thought wasn't, no, we can fix this, but yeah. We probably are. Divorce, when you do it right, is just another chore. We divided things the way people do. Books to her, records to me. The good couch for her, the older one for me. We were civil, polite, even kind in that distant way you are with someone you once loved but no longer recognize. The lawyers said we were amicable, a nice word for two people who'd run out of energy to fight. The day we signed the final papers, we met at the courthouse. She wore a blue sweater I didn't recognize. New, probably. A purchase I knew nothing about. A life I wasn't part of anymore. We didn't speak much, just the necessary things. Did you bring the paperwork? The notary is over there. At one point, her hand brushed mine when we passed a pen. Neither of us flinched. That was the worst part. There were moments, though, when I almost broke. When she handed me back the spare key to the house, our house, once, and her fingers trembled just slightly. When I found a note she'd left in a box of my things, just 2 words. Be well. When the judge said marriage dissolved and it was over, just like that. 23 years ended in 3 seconds. I wanted to say something then. Not to stop it, it was too late for that, but to mark it, to acknowledge that this wasn't just paperwork, it was a death. The death of us. But I didn't. I just nodded, shook the lawyer's hand, and walked out. That first night alone, I expected to feel something big. Grief, rage, relief. Instead, I heated up a frozen pizza, ate it standing at the counter, and went to bed early. The bed was too big. That was the only thing I really noticed. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, and thought about how strange it was that a person could be gone before they actually left, that we'd probably lost each other long before the papers were signed, and all those small moments when we chose silence over speaking, distance over reaching out. I rolled onto her side of the bed. The sheets still smelled like her. I didn't cry. I just breathed in, then out, and waited for morning. The first text came 3 days after the papers were signed. Forgot to tell you, the gutter guys are coming next week. You should be home when they check the back slope. Practical. Necessary. The kind of message you'd send a neighbor, not someone you'd shared your life with for over 2 decades. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have said a dozen things. Thanks for letting me know. How are you holding up? I miss you. Instead, I typed, got it. And that was the beginning of the silence. I became very good at not being there. When mutual friends invited us both to gatherings, I'd arrive early and leave before she got there, or cancel last minute with vague excuses. Not feeling well. Work ran late. The lies were easy because no one pushed. Divorce makes people uncomfortable. They're happy to let you slip away quietly. Once, at the grocery store, I turned down an aisle and saw her standing by the cereal, holding a box of the granola she used to eat every morning. I ducked my head and walked straight out of the store, leaving my half-full cart by the registers. Cowardice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a man in his 50s speed-walking through a parking lot to avoid a conversation. Her calls started in month 2. Always in the evening, always around 8:30, the time we used to sit on the porch with glasses of wine and talk about our days. I never answered. Then, one night, she left a message. I know you don't want to talk, her voice sounded tired, but I need to ask you something. Just call me back, please. I played it 4 times. The please is what got me. She'd never been one to beg. I waited 3 days. Then I texted, what do you need? Her reply came instantly. Was any of it real for you? I put my phone in a drawer and didn't look at it for 2 days. When I finally responded, all I wrote was, of course it was. She didn't reply. I convinced myself this was the right way, that no contact was cleaner, that every conversation would just reopen wounds. But late at night, in the dark of my now too quiet bedroom, a quieter voice whispered, "You're not protecting her. You're protecting yourself." Because the truth was, I didn't know how to talk to her anymore. The woman who'd known me better than anyone was now a stranger, and every word between us felt either too intimate or too hollow. So I chose nothing. I told myself it was respect. Really, it was fear. The final message came in month 6. A letter, handwritten, delivered by certified mail like some legal document. But when I opened it, there were just 3 lines. I don't need explanations. I don't even need apologies. I just needed to know I mattered enough for a goodbye. I read it standing in my kitchen, the winter light coming in gray through the windows. The house was so still I could hear the clock ticking in the next room. For the first time since she'd left, I sat down at our old kitchen table, the one we'd bought at a flea market years ago, its surface still bearing the ring from where she'd once set a too-hot pan. And I cried. Not for the marriage, not even for her, but for the man I'd become, the kind who could love someone for 23 years and then let them walk away without a single honest word. It was the grocery store that broke me, not some dramatic confrontation, just the produce section on a Tuesday afternoon. I was reaching for a bag of oranges when I caught the scent of her perfume. Not actually her, of course, just some woman walking by wearing the same vanilla and bergamot blend she'd loved for years. My hand froze midair. Suddenly, I was back in our old kitchen, watching her chop vegetables at the counter, that same scent lingering in the air as she hummed along to some old Fleetwood Mac song. A mundane moment I hadn't thought about in years, now so vivid it hurt. That's when I realized I'd been remembering us all wrong. For months, I'd told myself the divorce was inevitable, that we'd grown apart, that it was nobody's fault. All those tidy explanations that let me sleep at night, but standing there with oranges in my hands, it hit me. We hadn't fallen apart from lack of love. We'd suffocated from lack of words. All those times I'd bitten back, "I'm sorry," because it felt inadequate. All the nights I'd rolled over instead of saying, "I'm lonely." The hundreds of tiny moments where I could have reached for her hand but didn't, could have said, "We'll get through this," but stayed silent. The divorce papers weren't the end. They were just the paperwork for something that had already died from neglect. 2 weeks later, I ran into Sarah, her college roommate, our old friend, at the post office. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. Sarah had always been like that. We got coffee at the diner across the street. I expected her to tear into me, but she just stirred her coffee and said, "She's dating someone, you know." The words landed like a punch. "Oh," I managed. "That's good." Sarah gave me that look, the one women have perfected since childhood, the one that sees right through you. "She cried for 3 months after you stopped returning her calls. I thought," my voice cracked, "I thought no contact would be easier." "For who?" Sarah asked. And there it was. Sarah didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her quiet words cut deeper than any accusation. "She didn't need you to fight for the marriage," she said. "She just needed to know those years meant something to you." I stared at my coffee, gone cold now, remembered all the times I'd told myself I was being the good ex by disappearing, how noble I'd felt. But Sarah was right. My silence hadn't been kindness. It had been another form of abandonment, the final way I'd failed her. That night, I dug out my phone and pulled up her number. My thumb hovered over the call button for a full minute. What would I even say? "I'm sorry I let you walk away without a fight. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the goodbye you deserved. I'm sorry it took losing you to realize how much I took us for granted." In the end, I put the phone down, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I realized, finally, that some wounds don't need my clumsy fingers picking at them, that after all this time, the kindest thing I could do was respect her moving on, even if it meant staying gone. I sit now in my quiet living room, the TV playing some old movie we'd have watched together. The realization settles over me like twilight. This wasn't a story about a marriage that ended. It was a story about a man who didn't know how to fight for what mattered until it was gone. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. Not that we failed, but that I'll never get to show her I finally understand how. The years pass differently after a loss like that. Not better or worse, just different. You learn to live with the quiet. I still think of her sometimes. When I hear that Fleetwood Mac song in a department store. When I catch a whiff of vanilla and bergamot in a crowded elevator. When I find one of her old hair ties tucked behind a dresser. I've moved 3 times since the divorce. The memories don't gut me like they used to. Now they just settle over me like old dust. Familiar. Inevitable. Last spring, I finally cleaned out the spare closet. Buried behind winter coats and a broken suitcase, I found a shoebox of photos I'd forgotten about. Us at the Grand Canyon, squinting against the sun, her laughing at some long-forgotten joke at a backyard barbecue, our hands intertwined on a hiking trail. I sat on the floor for an hour, sorting through them, not crying, just remembering. The strange thing? I could recall exactly how her hand felt in mine, the way her thumb would absently stroke my knuckles when she was distracted. But I couldn't, for the life of me, remember what we'd been arguing about those last few years. Funny what the heart keeps and what it lets go. Sarah emails me sometimes. Not often, just enough to remind me we're still friends. Last Christmas, she mentioned she'd run into my ex at some fundraiser. She's happy, Sarah wrote. Really happy. He's a good guy. Teaches poetry at the community college. They're traveling a lot. I stared at that last part for a long time. The traveling. She'd always wanted to see more of the world. I'd always said we would someday when work calmed down. I'm glad someone finally took her. One sleepless night, I tried to write her a letter. Not to send, just to see if I could find the words I'd never been able to say. It took 6 drafts before I realized what I really wanted to tell her. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love you back the way you needed. I'm sorry I learned too late. I burned it in the kitchen sink, watched the flames curl the paper black before turning it to ash. Some truths don't need to be shared, just acknowledged. I'm okay. That's the thing people don't tell you about regret. You don't die from it. You just learn to carry it. I date sometimes. Nothing serious. I've gotten better at talking, at listening, at saying the things that matter before it's too late. And on quiet evenings when the house feels too still, I'll sit on the porch with a glass of wine, the kind she used to like, and let myself remember. Not just the end, but the good parts, too. Because here's the secret no one tells you about love. Even the ones that end badly were worth something. Even the ones you failed taught you how to be human, and sometimes that has to be enough.